I'm going to call the meeting to order of the Newbury Municipal Building Committee. This is Bob Connors, Chair of the Newbury Municipal Building Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Martha Taylor.
Here.
John Keller.
Here.
Eric Svan.
Here.
Dana Packer.
Here.
Okay. Good morning. This open meeting of the Newbury Municipal Building Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, extended until March 31st, 2023, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public hearings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of the public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. Please note this meeting is being recorded and that attendees are participating by video conference. All right, team. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
If you have your meeting packet and you turn to tab 1, this was the placeholder for the minutes of the 9/27 meeting. I apologize, they didn't get included in your packet, but they were sent separately last night. So why don't we take a minute to review and consider if we have any comments, questions, or corrections. All right. Team, any comments or corrections?
No.
Okay, do we have anyone else?
No.
Do we have a motion to accept the 9/27/22 minutes as written?
Make a motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. All those in favor say aye. Eric?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Martha?
Yeah.
Dana?
Aye.
And the chair votes yes as well. All right, if you turn to tab 2, it's the agenda for today's meeting. All right, so turning to tab 3, we have a reduced version of our next steps. So we had a quick conference call yesterday with Context Architects. It was Martha, Tracy, myself, and Jeff Shaw. And it was discussing pre-schematic design assistance, closing out programming needs, so that what the needs are for seats for staff. There is one other thing that's happening, team, is there are some civil functions that are now being conducted under the police, clam warden, harbor master, animal control, which are all civil in nature. We're looking to incorporate that in town hall. It's more aligned with a municipal operation than a law enforcement operation, although there is some overlap. So that's one of the things that we've been addressing. Martha, do you want to add any comments on the meeting?
No, not really.
Okay. So that will be our next step. All right, on item number 3, OPM RFQ. If you turn to tab 4 of your packet, there is a draft RFQ for an OPM. Martha had dug out and updated the OPM RFQ for what we used on the police station. I had another one. We wound up sending both off to town council, and town council provided the draft OPM RFQ in tab 4. I'm just going to suggest, why don't we review that, and we'll go back on the next agenda item. Excuse me, we'll readdress this at our next meeting with any questions, comments, or corrections. All right. Okay, so establish innovative standards concerning programming needs, workspace utilization. Jeff Shaw is going to be assisting us on that aspect. Tracy, Martha coming back to the committee with some proposed revisions to the current programming needs, anticipating what other personnel we're going to have to take into consideration. All right, if you turn to tab 5, you'll see the typical draft estimate of costs, which we all know at this particular stage of a project, we're at a minimum, we're probably 12 months ahead of construction. This is, again, these are placeholders coming up with matters and numbers that, as more information becomes available, we will be able to update this budget. So if you go through it, it's broken out into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, basically 5 headings: estimate of probable costs for construction costs, with an escalation clause line item of 4%. Soft costs, which includes certainly design, architect, extra services, reimbursable expenses, furnishings, designs. Professional services, it's the line item for owner's project manager and clerk of the works, which is required by law, and the associated commissioning and construction testing. Fixtures and furniture, FF&E, as it's known as the next topic. And at the end, project-related expenses. We actually, on the topographic and utility survey, that's already been completed. But at this stage, it makes no sense not to adjust anything down at this point. And then we have on top of the escalation 4%, I've included a project contingency of 7%. So between escalation and contingency, we factored in about $1 million beyond anticipated cost. Anyone that's familiar with projects like this, the contingency does get used to fill in gaps. Dana, you'll be hearing the word value engineering and potential change orders. It's all the lingo that you'll be quite familiar with by the time you're done with this project. So why don't I stop there and open this up to any questions? Eric, do you have any questions at this time?
No, I was just thinking, I don't know, I was maybe thinking of maybe adding a column which was percent of total. Just another way of looking at it and keeping track of it. I could do that on my own, but
now you're talking about more like a percent of completion, more like
well, no, like if you take the total at the bottom and then you just use that to divide out. So what's the subtotal of the soft cost compared to the total? and just understanding what
Oh,
percentage.
okay, I got you, Actually, I can just do that on, I'll add it to another line. I get what you're saying. You want percentage of project cost per line item.
Yeah, because if we go back or compare it to other metrics, I'm sure John has some metrics. I mean, I have different types of projects, but in general, just trying to size it up. It's another way to understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that us that do this for a living understand is when you get into small projects like this, percentage numbers don't necessarily work as they do on a 30 or 40,000 square foot building. Just because
Understood.
you get to amortize cost over a larger,
Yeah,
Logical.
order of magnitude helps
right?
reduce
Right,
cost.
right, correct.
Anything else, Eric, you want to add?
No, and I assume you look back at the police station for some of those design build or FF&E items that were sort of came up through the process to make sure we've got them included here from the get-go, as opposed to realizing them later.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
all.
I mean, there's some other line items that are somewhat included in here and part of the build cost. But as we get on to tab 6, when we get into PEG server IT update, I'll get into more detail on that.
Just one more thing, if I may, like moving
Yeah.
costs, does that have to be in the budget?
No, certainly not. I just plug it in to have a real time.
Yeah.
As we know, what procurement's going to ultimately, refine how we're going to be budgeting and paying for this. Some of these things may be coming out of existing operating costs.
Mhm.
Others will be coming out of the construction budget. I just didn't want to forget it. It's going to be a number regardless of how it's being paid. And it will probably be dramatically reduced, Eric, simply because if you're going to be building a new building, we're likely going to be putting all new furniture in, which will come directly from the manufacturer or vendor doing the install. So outside of files and other sundry products, I'm not sure how much is going to be moved, but
Okay.
I'd rather have my thumb in the scale in that than to have it real time than less. But
All good.
okay, John,
Thanks.
any comments on?
Yes, we might want to do as a cost per square foot on these lines. And I don't know if we have determined the square footage yet. And then Jeff might be able to comment on his experience, how these costs are running for other projects too.
Yeah, good question. I actually had talked to Jeff a couple of weeks ago when I was preparing the draft. And amazingly enough, a town hall project is coming in at about $640 a square foot. And that's the number that I used under the estimate of probable cost.
Okay, good.
The attic area where it's not finished to the same level, certainly as grade 1 office space,
Right.
is we carried $500 a foot or thereabouts. But as we know at this stage, what did we learn in the police station? It went from 450 to 640 in about 14 months.
Right.
What's interesting, and maybe you guys have been seeing it, actually starting to see a slowdown. Supply chain matters are kind of resolving themselves. Costs have stabilized, and there's not a lot of new projects coming out of the ground outside of public work.
Mm-hmm.
At the institutional level, if it hasn't already been funded, part of a capital plan and underway, more of a wait and see attitude. So depending on how this goes and when it comes to the market for bid, 640 hopefully is a good number, and maybe it's a high number, but who the heck knows?
Bob is at in terms of Jeff's current estimate? Was it 540 last year and now it's 640 currently? Did he give any kind of?
You know what, I think when we looked at it before, it was like in the 500 range, being that town halls are not as complex as you get with a police station and all of the detention and added security. But
It's more like office building space, fitted up and so forth.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
We're seeing $100 at its peak, and it is seeming to stabilize or be normalized. Let's say it's not moving rapidly, but it's things like generators, elevators,
Yep.
are really long read time. VFD drives, because of the chips, are just way out there. And then some other things like just general roll-up garage doors are out there, only because they can't get the paint to finish their doors. So it's some odd things that are working through, and hopefully within a year, those things are corrected.
Insulation was a problem for a while there. So doing anything in the kitchen or refrigeration or walk-in coolers were delayed because they couldn't get the insulation.
So
that's settled down now.
So once we get the OPM involved, and we're working through the construction set at some point before, we should do a read on that, Bob, and see if there's something that would need to be pre-ordered or something. Hopefully we're not in that position, but we'd hate to get into construction and then to drag everything out just because we're waiting for something.
I like that comment, Eric. I've done that on a couple of projects where I bought the elevator and then we assigned it to the contractor, and we bought the generator and we're assigning that to the contractor, because I got one job up in Portsmouth and downtown. It was like 18 months to get the generator. That was a large generator. Small 15, 20 kilowatts are pretty available still.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, John, any other questions on the format or the concept we're using for cost components?
Oh, I think it's great. I'll look at my sheets and see if there's anything we could add to it, but I think you did a great job.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's a living document. It's basically worth the paper it's written on at this stage of the project. Martha, any comments or suggestions that you would offer on a line item we should be including that we haven't?
Nothing that I can think of right now. I think it's pretty comprehensive.
Okay, thank you. Dana, how about yourself? Any questions?
Yeah, well, seeing that I'm probably the only one that wasn't in on the police station, do we have a similar format that we used for the police station that matches?
Exactly.
Okay, my point was, I don't know if I've ever seen that one, but I can envision people in town wanting to compare those two together. So if we could, like, for example, we were talking about moving expenses. Well, if moving expenses wasn't on the police station, maybe it should not be on the town hall, and vice versa, whatever categories.
Yeah. Everything that's on this was on the police station,
Okay,
Dana. I would like to take credit that I created this from scratch just for this project, but we know how that goes with cut and paste. So many of the numbers here were really just placeholders that we took from the police station,
Right.
Outside of the construction costs, which we had some update on that. And I mean, $640 is what we paid at the police station, which kind of took my breath away for a town hall at this stage of the game. But okay, any other questions on that? Again, guys, this is a living document that will continue to be updated, probably on a monthly, if not weekly basis. Certainly, as we get more involved, it will change. All right, let me go back here. So if you turn to tab 6. Okay. So one thing that we've talked about in watching some of the select board meetings in the past, and Dana and Martha, you're probably more familiar with this than the rest of us. There was comments about the, I'm going to call it the PEG server, which is used to broadcast our public meetings. That it's located in the old town hall. There was some question whether or not it needed to be relocated over to Kent Way because of the distance between point A and point B. There seemed to have been some drop in efficiencies that was creating some issues on broadcasting. Seems like that's cleared up itself, but I had reached out to Matt Cooper, who is the IT manager for the town, to start a conversation about that. Just thinking that whatever we do from a town hall standpoint, we're going to be looking at a server of some sort and relocation during construction, or moving it over to Kent Way or whatever it may be. But this was an email that Matt had sent me. And so if the town goes forward with a new building on 25 High Road, we would have to temporarily relocate the existing server. And the recommended location by Matt was 7 Morgan Avenue. Being its proximity to Town Hall, and the recent update has conditioned power, backup power, and they do have room for it up in their 3rd floor IT room. Matt did speak with the chief, and didn't seem like there'd be any problem hosting the PEG connectivity service. Once Town Hall was done, we would be reinstalling, bringing it back to Town Hall. And the good thing on this is about $100K line item. Matt estimated it was $25K for the relocation and another $25 for the reinstall. And updating the server itself could be in the 50 range. The town accountant has determined that the funding source could be the PEG funds that are collected via Comcast and turned over to the town annually. So there may be some budget relief there, because I have some money included under FF&E for this. So there may be a separate line item as a separate funding source. But why don't I stop there? Eric, any comments?
Nope, just as long as everybody in town that has technology overview is in agreement or thinks it's a good plan, then.
Yeah, I think that the point was to get it started now, so that the OPM, the architect, everyone's hearing about it up front, and it doesn't become that last minute add change order, which you know how that goes cost-wise.
Yep. Right.
Anything else, Eric?
No.
On that topic?
Nope.
John, how about yourself?
Yeah, are we in the cloud for our storage right now for the town?
Good question. I don't know.
Yeah, because that would reduce our cost quite a bit. You know, doesn't take, the server room is not even a server room anymore. It's just a much smaller setup for the equipment you do need for Wi-Fi and so forth. So that should be something we should ask Matt. Are we on the cloud? And if we aren't, how can we do that and reduce that cost and make it easier for the future?
Yeah, I think I think that's a good question. And what I'll do is down the road, we'll bring Matt in, and he can,
Sure.
We'll invite him, and he can give us we'll do a little Q&A on it. My understanding is this is actually the equipment that records broadcast,
Right.
and then sends it back out over over the system. But
Great.
just want to make sure we have that in place. So
No, good move.
okay. All right, Martha, any questions on this, or any updates, being that you know most everything that goes on in the town?
Well, not most everything. The IT portion of it is something that I'm not really familiar with. So Nothing to add at this point.
Okay. Dana, any questions on this, or it's
No,
your select board that's been talking about this, so I just wanted to plug it into our discussion.
When you started talking about like the actual server, I totally agree with the cloud deal. I have a lot of people that run companies like that, and that is obviously in the future the way to go. But then when you backed off about, and you're talking about just the PEG stuff, I don't know what that entails. It seems crazy to be moving hardware around, but I guess that's something that we have to do. I mean, I would think that most of the stuff in the basement of the old police station, is it still, up to speed? Is it
Right.
technologically advanced? or is it a Super 8 camera with film? I don't know,
Yeah. Hey, I just kind of
Not related to
gleaning from some of the select board meetings that I've watched. I know this was kind of a hot topic for a while because broadcast signals were being dropped, and certainly the technology aspect of it was, beyond my capacity. But again, it's one of those things we want to plug in now, because otherwise it's a last minute thing, and those are the most expensive. So I think we're on top of that. Matt seems to have a good handle, and we have a funding stream for it if it needs to go forward. I guess the one thing would be, if it gets relocated to the police station, does it necessarily have to be reinstalled at Town Hall at Morgan at High Road if
That's
we
correct.
go? So it may be nice to do it, but it'll come down to, is it necessary to do it, and what's the pluses and minuses?
Well, it'll certainly be very secure. The question is are they accommodating to who needs to get access to it?
I think that's going to be the question. That was one of the questions I had with Matt when we were discussing the temporary relocation. And in talking to the chief, they just everyone goes through dispatch, man, 24 hours a day. They just give them an access card to get into the IT room. So, all right, any other further questions on the PEG server? All right, if you turn to tab 7, at our last meeting, we were talking about, I think it was Jack had brought up a couple of alternative sites, and those of us that have been kicking this project around since probably 2012, we're digging out some of the information that we had. I think, Dana, you covered the governor's site, where, if I recall, and correct me if I'm mistaken, governors were interested in the police station because of the public safety aspect of it. There were some hurdles and some added costs with capacity on their wastewater treatment system, and then a kind of an extensive cost for us to drill, blast, run sewer to their wastewater treatment system. Now, my understanding is they're no longer interested in hosting anything other than a police station. Am I correct on that?
I think that's probably fair. I could ask that again, but there's so many other pieces that are attached to that puzzle that, whether they gave it to us or not,
All right, right.
I'm not so sure that would be in the top 5. So.
Yeah, it's a process of elimination, honestly. More decisions are made by default than it's not who won the race, it's who's the last
Right.
person in the race. So,
and I'm glad we talked about it. I'm glad we're talking about other possibilities and why or why not they may be good or bad, because I think that, and then certainly that would encourage citizens that have totally new ideas can chime in whenever they want and throw that out there. But I think when you start, Eric's done a pretty good job at this. I think when you start editing down the sites and you look at what we have to choose from, it doesn't seem to me like there's even gonna be 3 or 4 that are the same.
Right.
You know, as far as cost goes and as far
Mhm.
as logistics and the build and all of that. So, you know, it's, yeah, I think we're on the right track. Let's put it that way.
Okay. I mean, I think the big point, we had a global meeting with all the boards and the public over in the library. And I want to say it was either 2012 or 2014. And we hashed out a number of these sites. I think, Dana, you saw the video of that. The one thing that we all agreed on while we were closing out sites was, before you expend this kind of money on a municipal building, that the prerequisite was a municipal sewer or municipal water source was a primary need. And that really limited the location where this could go to either Governor's, which just didn't pan out, its current location. And the only other area in town that I'm familiar with was the elementary school off of Hanover Street. If you look in your tab, there's a communication from the conservation agent that was Bill Holt back in May of 2021. Mr. Holt and a wetland consultant walked the parcel next to the elementary school and basically identified what existed, what areas were potential that you could build upon. And I'll read one paragraph. You know what? I'll read it. The wetlands are extensive, as I suspected. We found only 3 upland areas, only one of which is accessible without crossing wetland resource area to get to it. It was located directly off the school parking lot at the back left of the school parcel. Unfortunately, it is triangular in shape and only about 20,000 to 25,000 square feet, and is entirely within a 100-foot buffer zone of the wetland boundary. The other 2 areas are isolated upland, essentially island of an upland within the wetland boundary. They are both small, the largest being behind a house. Says a house, but not giving us a number, assuming that's on Hanover Street, and is about 30,000 square feet. The second smaller area is toward the back left side of the property and is about 10,000 to 15,000 square feet. Both are entirely in the 100-foot buffer. None of the upland areas would support the size building and infrastructure required. Now, I guess this was for a COA expansion. If you have any questions, so I think the analysis becomes universal for any construction. But let me stop there and go around. Eric, do you recall the discussion on the Hanover Street site?
Just that there was room, and again, the ballpark, and it was the same for being suggested over by the library, is that there was some possible town land, but it's tucked away. It's behind, and the adjacencies were debatable as whether that was causing more traffic and more congestion for the use of the building. Okay. So it was, like you said, at that level, some of the sites were proposed, and before we could get to cost or anything else, it was whether it perked or whether it had a civil sort of review of terrain sort of stopped it before it really got started.
Yeah, well, I mean, like one of the other things too, all of these sewer connections that we have in Newbury for municipal or critical facilities are tied into the Newburyport system, and they're all forced mains. And I remember the amount of effort and engineering that had to be provided when the existing town hall got added. We had to calculate in advance the ability to tie in the fire station and potentially a standalone police station. And that determined the size of the force main. So beyond the wetland issues on the Hanover Street, and do you want to put your municipal building behind a school, behind a parking lot, or behind a house? it never got to level to verify whether the sewer system was had capacity to be added to it. But John, any comments on this particular location?
Well, it seemed pretty obvious. I've worked with Pat Seacamp on other projects, and it's would be hard to mitigate all that space to give us the needs that we need. Just seems like Morgan Ave is such a good spot to be in for everything.
Yeah, process of elimination, John. That's how it's probably how we're going to wind up doing all this.
Yep.
Martha, excuse me, John, any further comments?
No, that's it. Thanks.
Okay. Martha, any comments?
Just on the Newbury Elementary site, just to, kind of echo what's been said, it just doesn't seem like it's a site, given the presence and extent of the wetlands, that it's viable for a municipal building. And just, thinking about the cross traffic with school buses and all of that kind of stuff and people trying to get in, it just, for a lot of reasons, it just doesn't seem viable.
Okay. Anything else, Martha?
No.
Dana, any questions, any comments?
Yeah, well, it's the COA was one thing. The town hall is a totally different animal when it comes to curb appeal and availability and traffic and, times of days when people are working and when school's in and school's out and everything else. So it's kind of like, it didn't fit for the COA, and I'm having a hard time figuring why it would be the #1 spot for the town hall. It doesn't appear to fit into that category.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's been eliminated by the lack of access. I think you bring up a good point. The compatibility between a public school and the municipal building and bus traffic, and the mere fact that you're not going to be able to build the building that you need due to the wetland restrictions you have. But all right, why don't we, in the same tab, I think, Eric, you had sent me, this was the civil assessment at 25 Morgan Ave. And I thought it was helpful to put it into the packet because it gives you a summary, a complete summary of site conditions, zoning, available sewer water, parking, water supply, drainage, natural gas services, soil conditions. So it thought it would be very helpful in it. And again, I think it go back to site selection is usually by default, not by someone picks one and that's the winner. Looking at this assessment, all the boxes have been checked to make this a viable location for a building of this size. So why don't I stop there? Eric, you want to add some comments?
Just was digging through old information since I started to try to pull stuff forward that would be helpful so we weren't reinventing. But I think you said that, and if other sites are proposed, then there's a checklist that could quickly be created out of this to make sure everything is equal to equal or can be compared appropriately.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Eric. John,
Yep.
Any comments on this?
Yeah, I haven't read this yet, so I'll pass for the time being.
Okay. Martha, any comments or questions?
I agree with what Eric said. I mean, this provides us a checklist. So if anything else is suggested, we can look at it in that vein. But it does seem like 25 High Road really does check all the boxes in terms of location.
Okay, thank you, Martha. Dana, any questions?
No, are we up to tab 9? Is that where we're at?
We're actually at tab 7.
Okay.
So,
because I don't mean to, I'm probably jumping way ahead of you, but the space requirements, I think a lot of people in town are very interested in the space requirements. I think if we can, tailor this, I understand this is like a generic, numbers. If we could really tailor this down to what we're really going to need, a lot of people's going to want to see that. That's all.
Oh yeah, that's actually the most important next step. and we're working with context on that, Dana. We're calling it pre-schematic design to finalize the programming needs. And all that means is how many seats, how many people, how many file cabinets, how many meeting rooms, and then finding a spot or putting a box in the room in a building to do that. But again, I just think it was important to, because this has been such a long process, it's easy to lose track of how you wind up at Morgan Ave in the pathway to it from all the other sites. And I think the takeaway from tab 7 is it's only viable if there's a municipal sewer or municipal water. And right now, Morgan Ave is the only one that fits that bill. So, Dana, anything else? And we'll just keep moving on. unless you
No,
have
let's go.
Okay, tab 8. So tab 8 is just, again, I'm keeping until we have updates. Tab 8 gives you the floor plan layout. At our meeting yesterday, we were talking about certainly the flow of how should the offices be laid out when you come to town hall. Bob Connors goes to town hall. What am I going there for? I'm either probably paying my taxes, going to the assessor's office, or looking for some permit of some sort. Whether that be conservation, Board of Health, ISD, animal control, clam warden, harbor master. And we were talking in broad brush terms of having, quote unquote, a permitting area. So when you came in the main lobby, right or left on the first level would likely be town assessor and town clerk. If you went to the elevator and went up to the second level, directly across from the elevator would be, let's call it your permitting center. Now, this is still conceptual at this time, but it's just some direction to start to create. We got boxes that know that basically fit. Now it's time to fine tune it. And so why don't I stop there? Martha, do you want to add any comments to this, as you were certainly participating in the meeting?
Well, we are going to go back and take a look at coordinating locations, as Bob was saying, to try to centralize the permitting areas together, and take another look at flow and adjacencies and proximity and all of that, as well as function and who might be able to work in a sort of an open office area, or with seats that are not permanently assigned, a little like the report writing area in the PD, and who needs permanent offices.
I have a question. I keep referring to the clam warden, but I'm assuming the shellfish warden and the clam warden are one and the same and not two separate type titles at this point. That's a question for Tracy Blaze. Tracy, I see you're on the call. Thank you for joining us. You're on mute. Okay, well, not important now, but it will, hence why we're going to continue to work on programming needs and pre-schematic design layout. All right. So, anyone else have any questions on layout? Or what?
Oh, all set.
Okay. John, all set?
Yes, I'm all set.
Martha?
I'm all set. Thanks.
Dana, any questions?
Not at this point.
All right, tab 9. Okay, in tab 9, and this was good work on I think, Martha, you had to play a critical role on this. It gives us, now this is what's going to be updated, Dana, that's the first thing we do is go through all of the space locations to make sure we've got everything covered. But what you have is the comparison to existing at Kent Way and what's proposed and what level it's proposed on in the new building. Okay, I think the one thing that's always amazing, Dana, is to get 7,000 square feet of usable office space or meeting rooms, you need to build a 10,000 square foot building because of the footprints of walls, hallways, it's about a 70% net figure is what you get out of a building of actual. A 10 by 10 office is 100 square feet, but it probably takes 120 square feet to 130 square feet of building to house it. So I think what you'll see, Dana, is the space needs summary will be updated. Tab 8, the actual floor plans will be updated. And we'll be looking at service counters in the assessors area, ISD, tax collector, town clerk, where you walk in and you'll get a counter. I think one of the big things we talked about yesterday was as the world becomes a little more crazy, what do we have to look at for security? When you come into the first floor level, how do you control traffic at that point? Do we actually have to start looking at ballistic glass at the treasurer? So when you come in the front lobby, everyone comes in the front lobby and then gets directed either to the elevator to go upstairs or whatever. But we're going through a thought process on what level of security are now required or anticipated for public spaces like a town hall. Kind of a sad day, you just can't walk around through everyone's office and say hi, but it's something we're going to go through the process and at least decide what, if anything, we need to do beyond the norm.
So a note, Tracy texted me, she doesn't have audio for some reason.
Oh, okay.
And we don't have a chat function here, so she can't weigh in, but she did say that the shellfish constable is a single person.
Okay, so clam watering shellfish. I'm calling them clam water, and that actually is shellfish, which better to verify than continue to. God knows we might have one for quahogs and one for razorbacks. Who knows?
Right, but we will be updating that whole list of personnel.
Yeah.
As we're going through it. So.
Okay, Dana, any questions from you at this point on? Just so you're understanding how the process is going to work. So tab 9 gets updated first, then we'll plug it into the drawings in tab 8, and so on, and it just kind of works its way back through the packet to see what impacts it has to cost.
I like it. Are we going to get first? I guess I'm jumping ahead again, but the next meeting, like, how far apart do you want to have these meetings in general?
Starting out at this stage, because we have to secure the services of the architect and to secure the services of an OPM. Context is putting together a schedule of costs, kind of a menu selection, so we can look at that. I think we'll probably stick to 30 days at this point. This will quickly become weekly once we get into when the whole team's in place. OPM's on board, architect is doing schematic designs, and bringing an estimator on to be able to give us a real-time number, a snapshot number on that given date based on information. one of my tasks will be to create a schedule and write down to when we're going to go to town meeting, when we have to go to the ballot for an override, to when we want to be ready to go out to bid for construction, and in the start of construction with a duration. If you go back to, let me just see here. If you look at tab 3, it kind of gives you what the next steps are and how this spelled out. And it's, so the part I just described, which is called, pre-schematic design, it's 250 days since when we've been formed. From that point forward, it's about 400 days from going through the bid process to awarding the contract, starting contract, to issuance of the certificate of occupancy. Right. Any other questions, Dana?
No,
Right. So let me circle back to everybody. Eric, any questions before we go back to the agenda? There's some other items on the agenda.
No, I think you have it laid out. And I guess the next steps of context in terms of developing the program and sort of refining a conceptual design before we need to go through the process of first selecting the OPM, and then with the OPM selecting the architect through the procedures that we've outlined. Just understanding how that's going to unfold and how everybody gets some input in that. So I think that's what we're all about. So no questions. I think you've got it all outlined. I just need to keep plugging away with it.
Okay, thank you, Eric. John, any questions or comments?
Yeah, just want to clarify with context, we've hired them for conceptual of what they're doing, but how do we decide how we're going to try and go forward with them? Are we going to work with them giving us an updated budget, or do we have to do anything publicly, a public RFP for this?
Yeah, good question. Tracy proposed that to town council, and because of the original RFQ, it was determined that an amendment can be done.
Perfect.
So, but again, you know what, we want to, retain the option of going out for an RFQ. We want to get through the next step, which is the pre-schematic with context, and depending on their pricing and their schedule and capacity, I guess we'll make the decision to either continue forward, or do we have to go back out for an RFQ?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Martha, any questions?
Not at this point, thanks.
Thank you. Dana, any questions?
no.
All right. So let's go back to the agenda. So agenda item, we've gone through establish a probable cost. Project schedule, all phases, that's work to be done. I hope to have that available in draft form for our next meeting. Same thing with items. Item number 7, establish communication protocols between the committee and all the associated agencies and subs. Typically what we did before, that the meeting packet is sent to town administrator as part of our protocol, which I can circle back with Tracy or the select board if they want more than that. Every now and then we were doing, at least we did on the police station, and correct me if I'm wrong, we did basically a quarterly update when we had updated pricing, updated plans, updated programming. And I would say that we would just continue to follow that same protocol. Eric, any comments on that? Okay, John, any comments on just sticking with what worked on the police station for communication between all the parties?
No, I think it's a good way to do it.
Okay.
Let's continue.
Martha, how about yourself?
No, I think that makes sense. Eric was muted previously. He just tried to unmute. I don't know.
Yeah, no comments. It's the same process we followed
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Dana. So Dana, I think if you want, I can send you a couple of the reports, the quarterly reports we had done for the police station, prior to you joining the select board. It'll give you a flavor for the level of detail that we provide to keep the select board informed.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Establish local permitting approvals and time frame. I want to say the civil assessment that Eric had provided us previously done at Town Hall gives us a lot of the guidelines for local permitting approvals, not necessarily the time frame, but again, some of these are placeholders, team, just so that they don't get lost in the shuffle. Martha, do you on this site? It seems from the civil report that we got that a building of proposed size will meet zoning there. We can certainly meet the parking requirements. Is there any ZBA type of approval needed? I don't think it was on the police station, and it's still that same zoning district.
Right, it's in the Upper Green Business District. At this point, I don't see any ZBA, any requirement for ZBA approval. But, we'll have to keep an eye on that as the project
Yeah.
develops. We will have site plan review, obviously.
Right. Mhm.
It's in the Water Supply Protection Overlay District, so that's a special permit from the select board.
We're out of the buffer. I don't see any according to the site plan. So
Right, it is out of the buffer zone. The only other factor may be that it is in our National Register Historic District. So that probably will be a conversation with the building commissioner and the historical commission.
okay. Well, as we know, much to do, little time to do it. All right. Communications. I think I provided you with an update. We reached out to contacts to start the process there. I did have a phone conversation with John Lemieux from Vertex, who is the OPM of record on the police station, discussing a couple of ideas with Vertex in a similar fashion as we had with Context, which town council has determined that we can consider an amendment to the existing contracts to add additional work, or we reserve the right to go out to the RFQ process. I think the amendment process works with the time is of the essence, trying to piece this all together and get it packaged up for Springtown meeting. But again, we reserve that option. Outside of that, team, I don't have anything else. Martha, any other communications that you've received on this project?
No, nothing.
Yeah, I did receive a call from John Ashton from yesterday. I'm going to follow up with him later today. Unfortunately, the New England Patriots were playing and took my full attention to watch us lose to the Chicago Bears, which is a little bit of a personal thing because my wife's from Chicago, so there's a little gloating going on in the room. But all right, so before I open it up to a citizen's comment, let me just circle back with everybody. Does anyone else have any other comments they want to add? Eric?
Just, I guess the thoughts on what you just brought up of continuing to contract or going out for qualifications, because that is the whole essence of the process, is to seek RFQs for submitting. Companies submit qualifications and you pick a company on the qualifications, and then negotiate a contract with the person the company that you feel is best qualified. Is there's synergies for staying with context, and there's synergies for going out to the market and see what other firms have to offer and what other firms have currently most recently successfully done. That's all I bring up, is how we think through that.
Yep. Thank you, Eric. John, any further comments before we open this up?
I agree with what Eric just said. When we talk about Vertex, you know, are we satisfied with what John provided? Are we satisfied with what the project manager provided? Or do we want to see potentially another project manager if we stay with Vertex and so forth? You know, we have a local company that did the Topsfield Town Hall and Design Techniques. John Sarasabone is a local guy, and he does a lot of libraries and town halls. We want to give a firm like that a chance to present to us or a few others. So it's kind of the same vein that Eric spoke of context.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to this team is, if we go the RFQ route, it could be a 4-month process between publishing it, posting it, interviewing it, final selection, negotiating it. And you add 4 months to where we are now, where we're not, it puts us back into the middle of 2024. I don't know what that will bring cost-wise. It may actually work to the advantage of a project as the economy slows down. So I think that's the comparison we're doing. The amendment gets us going right now. The RFQ kicks it down the road. But so hence why we're kind of doing a little bit piecemeal, John, on the pre-schematic stuff. Because once we agree to that, and that makes sense and meets our programming needs, it kind of solidifies a square footage cost, which gives us a little more basis to update our schedule of values. But
well, it's not uncommon to use an independent architect to get your conceptual pre-schematic, and they may or may not be awarded the going forward. But I think it's pretty easy. Eric can speak to this. Pretty easy for anybody to pick up the footprint and the layouts and then start rolling with it too.
Yeah, I mean, we're so far ahead on this project. I mean, if you recall the police station, we didn't have any of this done when in the last committee that was formed to actually, undertake getting it to the finish line. So to walk in and already have these pre-schematic designs and programming needs, existing versus proposed, now that's huge. That in itself is a 6-month time saver for us.
Absolutely.
So, okay. Anything else, John?
Nope, all set.
Martha, any comments you want to add?
No, I'm all set, thanks.
Okay. Dana, any comments before I open this up to citizens' comments?
No comments.
Okay. All right. So although this isn't a public hearing, what I'd like to do is to open the meeting up to citizen comments. We're asking citizens to limit their comments to 3 minutes. It doesn't mean that we can respond to what they're asking simply because it's not on the agenda, or it's a good question that requires some follow-up. Martha, do we have anyone? I see Jim, my pal Jim Moran, sitting out there. How you doing, Jim? Is there anyone else that is out there, has a raised hand, that wants to add some comments?
I don't see anybody.
Okay. Jim, welcome. You're on mute, and give us your best 3 minutes, my friend.
Thank you, Bob. Question, what is the estimated probable cost?
You know what? That's a good question. It's in about the 10.5 range, Jim, to round up. It's on the schedule of values that was circulated, of which that about $1 million of that is contingency and escalation at this point. But certainly, as you know, at this early stage of a project that won't be out to bid for upwards of 8 months. There, yeah, 10,000. Let me do this, Jim. I'm going to read down. I'll give you the total breakdown. Estimated probable cost. Construction 8.223 with a 4% escalation. Soft cost 717,500. Professional services, certainly OPM, testing, commissioning, 410,000. FF&E, 599,000. Project-related expenses, which again, some of these are placeholders, 56,000. Project contingency, 635,000. Project total, 10,585,000, about.
Okay, and so they sum up to about 10.5 million bucks, right?
Yeah, that's where we're at now as a starting point, Jim.
That's good. The size, the square footage is what?
Conceptually, it is at 10,000 square feet. I carry 10,400 square feet for construction costs, simply because of the added animal control, clam warden, harbor master. So we're in around that 10,400, 10,500 square feet till we finalize our programming needs and all the boxes fit on the floor plan. That's what we're using. So 10,400 of usable office space and about 2,500 attic improvements, so file storage and mechanical IT.
So we're close to 13,000 square feet with the attic.
Yeah, I think the attic, I'm treating the attic, Jim, in my mind is if we had a full basement because ground conditions or water table allowed, we'd be housing a lot of the same equipment and we wouldn't be calling it finished space. It'd be, accessory space. So from a functional office standpoint, it's going to be in the 10,400 square foot range at the moment. Programming will further determine. Eric?
Bob, yeah, we're talking about usable program here,
Right.
right? It's not the gross, there's no grossing factor added to that. We're talking about what the program of the rooms and the
Yep.
spaces are.
Okay. Jim, any other comments or questions?
Yeah, to clarify, Eric, the 10,000 square 400 is total usable space, yes or no?
It's usable space for a room, but the corridor outside to get to that room is not included in that.
So are you saying you'll multiply that by add on another 30% to get to the total?
Well, depending on how efficient it is, it could be, 10 to 30%.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me just jump in here, Jim, if I may. Eric, the floor plans are 5,000 square feet gross usable space, where the net usable space will be probably 70% of that. I think if we looked at, if you go back to tab 9, it'll give us what we're looking at for. Okay. Square footage. Yeah, so the conceptual plans were 5,000 square feet per level with about 2,500 in the attic. But again, we're at the very earliest stage, Jim, where that until we close out our programming needs and potential expansion to anticipate the next 20 years, it's work in progress.
Sure.
Well, can I interject something for a minute?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'm looking at, I think, I'm kind of not real complicated on this, but right under tab 5, you've got the cost component chart there.
Yep.
Block number 2 the construction costs, you got 10,400 square feet. I think, I'm not trying to put word in Jim's mouth or anything, but that cost right there was at $6,600,000, somewhere along that line. Isn't that a pretty good projection for what the usable space, how much it's going to be and how much it's going to cost us?
Yeah, so I would, yeah, your answer is yes. That's just based on to build a building in the approximate 10,000 square foot space of, call it Class A office meeting space. It was suggested the going rate is about $640. Now,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a realistic number, and
Yeah.
I think that I think, Jim, I just want to make sure that everybody, I think, understands that the building itself is going to be in the 10 million, 10.5 million range. But I think the other expenses that it takes to put that together is included in that price.
yeah.
I think that's the important thing to take from this.
Yeah, I think the big thing is none of these are going to be the actual numbers we end up at. There's going to be programming needs that will add square footage or deduct square footage. There'll be value engineering that you'll hear a lot more about, Dana, where that we're going to be going from the Cadillac of HVAC systems to you know, a good standard Chevy Impala. So
Hawks fan.
yeah. So again, we're setting up the controls for the next step. We're very premature on finalizing any of these numbers, but these are viable numbers at this early stage. Jim, any wrap-up conversations, because you're at
Yeah,
your limit?
one final question. Does this mean demoing the old building and building new complete?
Yes, that would be it, Jim. That's a good question. The new flex energy codes and then the protocols for air changeover based on COVID. Right now, the recommendation requirements are for 100% outside air makeup. When the police station was being built, the wall construction was 2x6 with spray foam. And then to meet the energy codes, we had to add an additional, it was a 4-inch skin panel that had to go over the entire exterior wall and roof. So you're creating about a 10-inch wide exterior wall for energy. Floor to ceiling height was in the 12-foot range because you needed about 3 feet for mechanicals, for plumbing, your plumbing, MEP, sprinkler, fire protection. Town hall, it has, I think, 8 feet 6-inch stud heights from the floor. And if I'm not mistaken, it is all 2x4 construction. So this is based on new construction, Jim, not renovation, to answer your question.
Thank you.
Jim, thank you. All right. Any other comments from the team?
Not at this time. Thanks, Bob.
All right. Well, you know what? We have our next meeting date. Right. Next meeting date. Let me pull the calendar up here. Obviously, we're going to be colliding with Thanksgiving. I'm going to suggest, why don't we meet on November 15th? That's the week before Thanksgiving. How does that work for everybody?
Works good for me.
Eric, does that work for you?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, Martha, how about yourself?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, and Dana, does the 15th?
I'm good with that.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, you know what? Let's go around one more time and ask everybody what their final words are. Eric, any words of wisdom that we should
No, I think
share with us at this point?
you laid it all out, and it's all in the format. We just need to advance on what we're deciding here. And as you said, it lies with context and an update of the program for the next steps. So I'm all good, thanks.
Okay. John Keller, any comments?
Yeah, I'm excited that we're so much further ahead than the police station, just because of the way the process can go. So, you know, we've done a good job of putting this all out, and I know the next couple of meetings we're going to be rolling along, heading towards the finish line quickly.
Okay, thank you, John. Martha, any comments? And Martha, thank you. A lot of this preliminary work you have undertaken, and you've done a great job, and it's a big help, and thank you for doing that.
Oh, you're very welcome. Yeah, I think just again to note that we are still refining the program. So the numbers, you know, the numbers may well change, and we really won't know what the cost is until we go out to bid and what the climate is at that point.
Okay, thank you, Martha. Dana, any final comments?
No. If you guys, you know, anything in between meetings, you know, I know the open meeting laws and all that stuff, but anything in between meetings, if you need some help or runners or a driver to go somewhere or something, I am retired, you know, give me a holler. If I have availability, I'll do what I can to help you guys out. So.
Yeah, you know what? Why don't we do this, Dana? There's going to be a lot of discussion at the town level on programming needs and adding what are we missing, what do we need to add, and you know what? Those are calls that you can sit in without it being a concern of having a quorum for the board. And you know what? And I think it would help you stay informed when you report back to your select board.
Yes.
So I'll make it a note that when we're doing that, we'll loop you in on those.
Great. And Martha, could you back him up with that? That'd be awesome.
Sure, happy to.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Well, hearing no other business, our next meeting will be November 15th, 2022 at 7:30. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Make a
you.
motion that we adjourn.
Do we have a okay, all those in favor? Eric,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Martha,
Yes.
Dana,
Aye.
and the chair votes yes as well. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good one.
Great.
Thank you. Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
bye.